The story begins with the opening of a giant door, and a maid carrying food on a tray walks through the doorway. The maid continued to walk in total silence, and when she arrived at her destination, she noticed that the table where the food was supposed to be served was a complete mess. So she took some time to clean it, and after she was done plating the food, she approached a man who was sitting at the dinner table reading a book, and she addressed him as His Highness, the Emperor. She went on to express her concern about the fact that the Emperor hasn't eaten anything once again, and she told him that everyone is worried about His Highness' health, and she asked him to please eat something. Agnes, the first emperor of the empire, remained silent. He continued to read his book with a bored expression on his face. Suddenly he spoke, saying it's horrible. The maid's heart sank in her chest because she thought Agnes was talking about the food she brought. She bowed her head, and she apologized. She agreed that she was being presumptuous, and she expressed with haste in her voice that she would clean this up right away. Agnes closed the book he was reading, and he told her there was no reason to clean up the food, because he was talking about the contents of the book he was reading. Agnes stared at the cover of the novel, and he read the name of the book, The Chronicle of the Flossomer Warrior, out loud. Afterward, Agnes questioned how such an unpleasant novel came to be, and he wondered how it ended up in the imperial palace. The maid was taken aback by how much Agnes hated the novel, and she questioned what kind of novel it could be for the emperor to dislike it so much. Agnes expressed to the maid that the novel depicts his future, hundreds of years from now, and like any other novel, the hero and the demon face off in battle. The empire which he built had already collapsed in the novel, and it was divided and chaotic. Instead of sending help to the warrior, everyone is blinded by their own interests, and no support was given to the hero in the novel. And in the end, the hero is defeated by demons and dies in a gruesome manner. Agnes continued to stare at the cover of the novel. He accepted the fact that the descriptions in the book are very realistic. However, he was skeptical that a book would actually be able to see into the future. He threw the book on the dining table. Afterwards, he glared at it, and in a cold tone, he expressed that there's no way the Agnes Empire will fall. Agnes leaned back in his chair and he closed his eyes, and he expressed his dissatisfaction about the fact that the story didn't leave him with any lingering feelings of excitement. However, it will be impossible to forget the contents of this third-rate novel now, and Agnes felt sorry for his own memory. Agnes was annoyed by the fact that he wasted his time reading the novel. He sighed, and he told his maid that he will eat first, then they will go out. After being dismissed, the maid left quickly but quietly, and after she was gone, Agnes sat there in silence with his chin resting on his right hand. Then he started to recall the celebration of his people after he conquered and united all the lands except the demon land. His people had all shouted that day as they celebrated that the fairy forest of the west, the sun sea of the east, and even the giant colony of the north was now their land as well. Those words of praise and admiration rested on Agnes's shoulders, but not in the way one would expect. Agnes turned his attention to one of the windows in his dining hall, expressing hesitantly that this was the end. There is nothing more for him to obtain, and there was nowhere for him to climb. The expression on his face changed, his demeanor became gloomy, and he expressed his boredom. Agnes closed his eyes, then the scene shifts, and we see a guard running with a weak person on his back. As he ran, the guard thought to himself, questioning why nobody was here. There was no one here, not even the other guards, and there were intruders. The palace is so empty that there's no problem with him running around like this. The exhausted guard spoke out loud, questioning why no one was guarding His Highness. Sion. The guard continued to push through even though he was exhausted. Things weren't supposed to be this way. Even though Sion is so weak that he lost the battle for the imperial throne, he is still a prince of the Agnes Empire, and even if his body fell apart, the guard was determined to protect Sion. Suddenly their path was cut off by two assassins. They rushed at the guard, and the first one attacked with a lateral slash. The guard moved back, dodging the attack. However, in that moment, the other assassin tried to decapitate him. The guard noticed the sword heading for his neck, and he lifted his blade to block the assassin's sword. The assassins continued to attack him, and the guard blocked all of their attacks with his sword in one hand, while he used his other hand to keep Sion on his back. As this went on, a third assassin appeared and struck him on the right rib. The guard quickly jumped back, and he addressed the assassins, calling them cowardly bastards for attacking him together. The assassins laughed, and one of them expressed that the guard is only alive because of the door behind him, and he expressed to the others that the guard seems to be a persistent old man. The guard had cornered himself. He now had his back against the walls of the palace. The assassins knew this, and they were willing to exploit it. They approached him with the intent to dispose of him in one strike. The guard laid Sion on the wall, and he stood in front of him, saying, "Just wait a minute, Your Highness." Then he faced the assassins, and he expressed in a passionate tone that no matter how many people come after Sion's life, he, Frito, will protect His Highness. The three assassins jumped at Frito, and Frito did his best to block. But because it was 3-on-1, he was struggling. One of the assassins attacked Frito with a downward slash. Frito blocked the attack, but his body felt the backlash. In this position, he asked the assassins to reveal their identities, and the assassin, whose attack he was blocking, refused, saying Frito doesn't need to know who they are since he is going to die soon. Two assassins proceeded to overpower Frito, and the third rushed at the sleeping Xian. Rather than Xian living in captivity for his whole life, the guard thought he would be doing Xian a favor by ending it cleanly like this. He expressed that he would mercifully let Xian Agnes die in one strike, and he pulled back his sword, and he jumped at Xian, preparing to stab him in the heart. Frito did his best to push past the two assassins that were overpowering him, but he soon realized that he wouldn't make it in time to stop the third assassin's blade, so he shouted for the sleeping Xian to run. As the assassin's sword neared Xian, it suddenly stopped, like it was striking a wall. This confused the other assassins. One of them stopped attacking Frito, and he turned to his fellow assassin questioning why he hadn't stabbed Prince Xian yet. The assassin told the others that his hands weren't moving. Through all the commotion, Xian opened his eyes, and he glared at the assassin that was trying to stab him. Xian grabbed the assassin's sword, and he stood up from the ground. Afterward, he moved the assassin's sword to the side. The assassin felt fear for the first time, and he begged the others to help him since he couldn't move his body. The assassin continued to beg the other assassins to help him because he couldn't move his body, and Xian continued to glare at him. The other assassins left Frito, and they jumped at Xian to end him. Xian activated the Black Star River ability, and suddenly the assassins were cut into pieces. Frito was in a state of shock. He stared at Xian, questioning what just happened. He called out to Xian, who was just standing coldly over the bodies of the assassins. Xian stood at the center of the mess he created with two black stars encircling him. He stared at his right hand, and he observed his body. With a grin, he expressed that something interesting has happened to him. In the beginning of Chronicles of the Florsmer's Warrior, there is a character facing death. This character had a fragile determination that couldn't even kill an ant, and a frail body that struggles to even walk. He lacked supporting forces, and he was overshadowed by the Court of Strife. This person, the prince of the fallen Agnes Empire, Xian, was secluded in a remote palace, and was nicknamed the Imprisoned Prince. The next day, Agnes, who had reincarnated as Xian, stood in front of a window to look at his reflection. It was embarrassing for Agnes to think that he reincarnated into a character that was only mentioned in a few lines in the novel, and according to the contents of the novel, Xian was supposed to have died in yesterday's attack. Agnes's power, the Black Star River, is a force influenced by the soul rather than the physical body, and if it wasn't for this power, he would have lost his life just like Xian did in the novel. Xian felt the window, and he noted that all of his senses were vivid. This made him conclude that he wasn't in a dream. And if this place is truly within the Florsmer Chronicles, then Xian knew that even though he survived yesterday's attack, he doesn't have much time left, as this world would perish in 3 years. The novel ended with the hero fighting alone against the Demon King. And after the hero's defeat, the Empire will completely collapse due to the Demon Realm, and according to the novel, this will all happen in 3 years. Xian thought this was troublesome. He didn't know how long it would take him to return to his original body, but until then, it is a must that he stays alive, and change the contents of this novel. Xian made his way to a desk, and he started looking through the papers that had laid there in a disorganized mess. He knew that the full-scale war between humans and the Demon Realm would occur in 2 years. In the meantime, the biggest obstacle he faced was to prevent the Empire from splitting. Not only will that be a challenge in itself, he would have to do it with this new pathetic body. He held his eye, and he thought about how even his ability, the Black Star River, is incomplete. For a weak, minor character, Xian thought this was an impossible task. Suddenly he felt his heart racing. He stared at his hand, recognizing what this feeling he hadn't felt in a long time was. For this new body he was in, there are still tasks that must be accomplished, and that really intrigued him. He couldn't help but smile, as the boredom he felt for a long time was now gone. He quickly got his feelings under control, as there were more important things needing to be addressed right now, and the first thing he needed to do was tidy up the surroundings. Later on in the evening, Xian wanted to find and deal with the instigator of yesterday's attack. Xian exited the room he was in confidently, and Frito, who noticed, called out to him in a questioning tone. Xian ignored him, and he continued to walk confidently. Even if the new body he was in was abandoned, he is still called the Prince of the Empire. And as Xian approached the door leading to the outside, he questioned how many people would dare to actually send assassins to the Imperial Palace without fearing the consequences. And judging from Frito's expression at the time, Xian guessed, even though the guards who weren't present yesterday were pretending to be in a panic, that this isn't the first time something like this happened. The guards that were guarding the door noticed Xian approaching. One of them spoke up, asking Xian to halt. Xian spoke to the guard, saying it's stuffy in here, so he wanted to get some fresh air, but the guard refused to let him go outside. He expressed that the sun is setting and it would be too risky for Sion to go out right now. Sion stared at the guard with an annoyed expression, and he questioned if it wasn't equally as risky inside the palace. The guard continued to hold his hand up, and he said even though this is the case, he couldn't allow Sion to go outside since he received orders not to do so. Sion glared at the guard, and he asked him whose orders he was following, and he reminded him that they are supposed to be his knights. Sion motioned his hand to the side, and instantly the guard's throat got slit. The guard fell to the ground and died, and Sion stood over the guard with a cold expression on his face. He spoke in a chilling tone that he never gave such an order. The other guard fell down and he screamed in horror. Frito called out to Sion, however he was ignored again. Sion approached the door, and he opened it. Then he turned his attention to the evening sky, and noticed a red moon, which confirmed to Sion that he really is in the world from the novel. Suddenly more guards could be seen hurrying to the entrance door, and as they made their way over, Sion noted the fact that the attack last night would have been impossible without internal cooperation, and that except for Frito, he would have to consider everyone as his enemy. The other knights arrived, and in a demanding tone the leader of the knights asked Sion to explain why he killed the guard. Sion turned his head towards them with a menacing smile, and he explained that he executed the guard for treason against nobility. The knights were taken aback. Sion went on saying they shouldn't be unfamiliar with this, and he started listing the guards and the knights' crimes. First was negligence in noble guard duties. Second was noble assassination indifference, and third was noble assassination conspiracy. And in the name of Prince Sion Agnes of the Agnes Empire, Sion expressed with a menacing aura that he sentenced them all to death. Afterwards he asked them if there were any objections. The leader of the knights was taken aback, but that was quickly replaced with nervousness as he realized that Sion knows about their involvement in yesterday's attack. And since they were already caught, he grabbed the hilt of his sword, and as he unsheathed his sword, he told the other knights to draw their blades as well. The other knights drew their swords, and the leader of the knights expressed that right here they would kill Prince Sion. Sion's eyes began to glow, and his smile grew more menacing. He thought this was amusing, very amusing indeed. The leader of the knights charged at Sion. Sion lifted his hand to cover his amused smile. His hand began to emit a dark aura, and he decided to add one more charge to the knight's sentences. The leader of the knights swung his sword at Sion. However, before his sword could reach Sion, he suddenly started coughing up blood. The dark aura around Sion's hand had grown, and as the leader of the knights dropped to his knees, he added the charge of attempted murder of the royal family. The leader of the knights died, and he fell flat on his face, horrifying the other knights. Frito was also shocked by this scene, and he questioned if this truly was the same Sion he knew. Sion turned his attention to the other knights, and with an intimidating aura about him, he told them that this should serve as an example, and if the internal affairs of the palace is revealed again, then their lives will be taken. Frito thought to himself that Sion is acting completely different from what he remembered, and what just happened should be an unimaginable feat for the weak prince who was once in seclusion. Frito took a knee, and he made note of the fact that Sion now has the charisma of a ruler. The next day Sion spent time in the training grounds practicing with the Black Star River ability. Afterwards he observed the remnant of his power on his hand. This made him glad because things were going smoothly, and at this rate he would soon ascend to the first level of the Black Star River. Suddenly a guard came running, announcing to His Highness that he had a guest. Sion was slightly puzzled, and he asked who the guest was. The knight reported that Princess Priscilla wishes to meet with him. Priscilla Bamel is a character from the Chronicles of Flosmer, who later became known as the Lady of Misfortune. Sion quickly got ready, and shortly after he met with Priscilla, and as they discussed, Sion came to find out that Priscilla was his fiancée. He asked her why she was here, and Priscilla took a moment to respond. She grabbed a cup of tea, and she took a sip. And as she placed it back on the table, she started talking about the reason why she suddenly came to visit, which Sion was so interested in. She called his name, and in a commanding tone she asked him to please annul her engagement with him. Sion, who had grown bored, picked up his tea, and instead of taking a sip, he just stared into it with a bored expression on his face. Priscilla continued on saying that Sion has to accept, and as she was about to explain what would happen if Sion didn't accept, he cut her off. He placed the tea back on the table, and he said sure. Priscilla was surprised by Sion's reaction. However, he didn't give her an explanation. He got up from the chair, and as he headed for the door, he expressed that there is nothing more to discuss. After Sion exited the room, Priscilla was still staring at the door in a daze. She couldn't believe that Sion agreed so easily. After exiting the meeting with Priscilla, Sion started heading back to the training hall. However, as he walked he heard a voice calling out to him, and when he turned, he was faced with two guards who towered over him. The one with the monstrous physique asked Sion in a disrespectful tone to please go back and apologize to Princess Priscilla. Sion asked the knight what he meant, and the knight, who was still looking down on Sion, expressed that Princess Priscilla doesn't deserve to be treated like that by someone like Sion. Sion glared at them, saying he didn't realize that was the case. Inside the room from earlier, Priscilla was deep in thought. When she first asked Sion to marry her, he was eager to do it, and now all of the sudden he was willing to break up the engagement. This didn't sit right with her, and she realized that if this happens then it will seem like she got dumped by the weak prince, so she quickly hurried to the door to chase after Sion. Even if the engagement is annulled, she couldn't let it seem like Sion was the one who dumped her. She opened the door, eagerly calling out to Sion, but what she witnessed outside the room terrified her. The knight with the monstrous physique was thrown aside by Sion like he is nothing, and Sion began to approach the blonde knight. Priscilla observed Sion as he approached the blonde knight with a cold-blooded expression. Seeing that the other knight was so easily dealt with, the blonde knight activated barrier magic. Sion attacked, and using his Black Star River ability, he was able to break through the barrier magic and send the blonde knight flying with a strike across the chest. Afterwards, Sion grabbed the blonde knight who had begun to cry by the mouth, and he expressed that he didn't like those who tried to block his path. Sion dropped the knight on the ground, and the knight quickly passed out. Priscilla approached the blonde knight holding her mouth in shock. She couldn't wrap her head around what was happening. Sion stopped walking, and he addressed Priscilla. He told her that she could take the knights, referring to them as it. Then he started walking again, and as he wiped the blood on his cheek he told Priscilla that he would keep this incident hidden. As Sion was walking, Priscilla called out to him asking him to wait a minute. Sion found this really annoying. He turned his head, and Priscilla asked him if it would be okay that she stayed here for a while. She expressed that her reasoning is because there are many things that need to be done in order to break off an engagement. At first Sion refused, but after thinking about it some more, he realized that having Priscilla stay with him for a few days could be beneficial for him if things go well. In the novel, Priscilla was made into an unlucky princess, and if he used that ability that branded her as the unlucky princess, then it's possible to find the true enemy within the palace. So Sion told Priscilla that she could do as she pleases. With a smile, Priscilla expressed that she would be in Sion's care then. 3 days later, Priscilla was still at the Chimseong Palace, but she was angry because Sion didn't come to visit her once during that time. She noted that she wouldn't have stayed if she knew it was going to be like this. Priscilla continued to think to herself, trying to figure out what is going on with Sion. She recalled the strength Sion showed while he faced off against the two knights. She recalled the power he used that day as well, and that power was something she had never seen before. Priscilla approached the door to her room, thinking that she must look into Sion today. Priscilla made her way to the training grounds, and as she approached, she called out to Sion, who was giving his guards some instructions. Priscilla asked Sion what he was doing, and Sion turned his head with a puzzled look on his face. Priscilla proceeded to ask Sion why he hadn't come to meet her for the 3 days she had been staying in the palace. She questioned if Sion was avoiding her on purpose, and if that was the case, she questioned why he asked her to stay at the palace. As she said this, Sion interrupted her, and he asked her to wait. Sion's aura filled the room, and in a cold tone he asked Priscilla to watch her words. Priscilla was confused, and she questioned what Sion meant. Sion told her that he meant she shouldn't cross the line. He reminded her that he never asked her to stay here, he simply didn't stop her from leaving. Besides, since she was the one who wanted to break off their engagement, he questioned if he should have any obligations to see her face. Priscilla grabbed her skirt, and she stormed off saying she understood. Sion watched her movements closely as she stormed off, and after she was out of the training grounds he turned to his knights, and he expressed that the number of night guards would double next week. He also added that patrols will be changed to a 3-man team, and he ordered all the knights to wear iron plates on their necks and chest areas. Later that night, a group of assassins entered the palace to try and assassinate Sion. The assassins made their way through the different rooms looking for Sion. Sion, who was waiting for his assassins, sat on his throne with his leg crossed. Sion was amused by the current situation, and as he waited he couldn't help but smile. As the assassins made their way through the palace, they couldn't help but feel as if something was off. The leader of this group of assassins had noticed that the security here is tighter than what they were told. It felt as if they knew they were coming. The screams of someone drew the attention of the leader of the assassins. He turned around questioning who was there, but to his surprise the scream belonged to one of his men. This confused the leader of this group of assassins because their formation shouldn't have a blind spot. The leader of the assassins was stuck in a daze. He couldn't figure out where an attack like this would have come from. As he tried to figure it out, the other assassins who were with him were struck down. The leader of the assassins looked around questioning who was doing this. As he looked around he noticed Sion approaching with a chilling aura about him. The assassin was struck with fear. From Sion's aura he concluded that he had been hiding his true power this entire time. The assassin wanted to flee so he could report this to the others, however as he turned to run away, he was decapitated. Sion spoke as the assassin's body fell to the ground. He exclaimed that he wanted to spare at least one guy. In a cold, chilling tone, he expressed that unfortunately that one person isn't the assassin. After dealing with this group of assassins, Sion stood over their bodies. He observed the remnant of the Black Star River ability on his hand, and he noted that everything should be going back to normal soon. His attention was then drawn to the sound of magic explosions, and he questioned if he had a magician in his palace. He quickly realized who it was, and he exclaimed that he had completely forgotten about her. The scene then shifts to the room Priscilla was staying in, and we see her in a standoff against a group of assassins. Priscilla started doing hand signs to cast a magic spell. As she did this, she asked the assassins to reveal their identities. The assassins remained silent, so in a tone of anger she reminded them that they were trying to raid the imperial palace. Then a magic circle appeared in front of her, and the assassins quickly stepped back. The leader of this group of assassins felt annoyed because no one told him there was a magician in the palace. The leader of the assassins jumped at Priscilla out of frustration, and he tried to stab her through the magic circle. Priscilla fought back as best she could by infusing more mana into the magic circle. However, the assassin's blade was slowly making its way through the magic circle. Priscilla quickly realized that the magic circle wouldn't hold, and her face was quickly filled with horror. The assassin managed to break through the barrier, and Priscilla's expression became distraught. Afterwards, the leader of this group of assassins pulled back his blade, and as he prepared to stab Priscilla, he exclaimed that this would be the end for her. But as the assassin's blade approached Priscilla's chest, his hands were guided away. The assassin was taken aback. He stared at his hand, questioning why his blade changed directions on its own. Suddenly, he was shot through the heart by a streak of black mana, and in his final moments, the assassin thought to himself, wondering what kind of shit is happening behind these walls. Sion approached the assassin's dead body, and he stood over it with a cold expression on his face. Another assassin, who was in hiding, watched the scene unfold before his eyes in horror. He noted that they failed their mission. He also never thought that there would be such a person, like Sion, in the Chimsung Palace, which was rumored to be abandoned. Sion glared in the assassin's direction with a cold gaze. The assassin was filled with fear, so to run away from Sion, he jumped out of one of the windows close by. Sion approached the broken window, and he observed the assassin as he fled. Sion lifted his hand, and a black streak of mana flowed from his fingertip. Priscilla approached, questioning what Sion was doing, but he ignored her. Thanks to his Black Star River ability, Sion is the only person who can use tracking spells, and he planned on using the darkness to lead him to the assassin's headquarters. The darkness he released from his fingertip flowed in the wind, and it attached itself onto the assassin. Sion glared at the assassin as he moved further away, and with a blank expression on his face, he thought to himself that he should visit the assassin's headquarters soon. The next day, Sion was getting dressed by his servants. As this went on, he became immersed in his thoughts. He thought it was a good thing that his Black Star River ability was already at rank 1, but the strain on his body was getting worse. After he was done getting dressed, he approached a room, thinking to himself that he needs to get his hands on something that can strengthen his body. As Sion entered the room, it was announced by one of the guards that His Highness, Prince Sion, had arrived. Inside the room, Evelyn Agnes was waiting for Sion with a teacup in hand. If the hero in Simmer was taken out, then Evelyn would be the closest to a main character than anyone else in the novel. She is the princess who is most likely to be the next emperor of the Agnes Empire, and also she is the only one in the royal family who, to be exact, tried to apply to become a warrior. As Sion sat across from her, Evelyn asked him about the state of his body. Sion was taken aback slightly. He became skeptical of her, so with a serious expression on his face he asked Evelyn what her question was supposed to mean. Evelyn told Sion that she asked because she heard there was an attack last night. Sion expressed that she has nothing to worry about, because as she could see he was fine. From this, Sion guessed that the assassination attempts on his life had already gotten out. Evelyn felt pity for Sion. She guessed that his personality changed so drastically because he was having such a hard time. After gathering her thoughts, Evelyn told Sion that she is glad to see that he was safe, and she expressed that she would make it her priority to find who attacked Sion and punish them. She also wanted to leave the guards she had brought with her, so Sion would be able to relax knowing he is safe. Sion refused her kindness, saying there wouldn't be a need for all that. Evelyn was confused, and she stared at him with a puzzled expression, awaiting an explanation. Sion turned her attention to the guards that were stationed outside, and he explained that he already had a lot of guards, so he wouldn't need any more, and other than that, he expressed that he was starting to wonder why she had come to visit him. With the cup of tea still in hand, Evelyn expressed that she simply came here because she was worried. Even though they were on different teams, they were still related, and her concern for her sibling had driven her to come. As she took a sip of her tea, she added that Sion is almost an adult now, and since that was the case, she asked him in a chilling tone, as she lowered the teacup from her mouth, if he knew that he needed to take the test. Evelyn placed her teacup on the table, and she told Sion to forget about the test in a demanding tone. Sion acted ignorant, and he asked why he should do as she says. Evelyn glared at Sion, and she questioned if he was acting dumb, or if he was genuinely asking because he didn't know. Sion expressed that it's the latter, and he asked her to explain why he shouldn't take the test. Because of Sion's shift in personality, Evelyn was taken aback that Sion hadn't been thinking about the test this whole time, and she expressed in a cold tone that he wouldn't be able to pass the test. She explained that Sion doesn't have the talent or strength to do so. In her opinion, Sion wouldn't even be able to pass the first round. But even if he were to pass the test and join the Bixyong Palace, she would still be concerned because that place is a place which is far worse than the test. She glared at Sion with an intimidating look, and she exclaimed that he wouldn't even last a week. Evelyn released her power, and 6 stars appeared above her head. She crossed her arms, and as her overwhelming pressure filled the room, she refuted her previous statement, and she says Sion wouldn't be able to last a full day, so he should give up on the test. Chungseonghi, a power only granted to the direct lineage of the royal family of Agnes. It was the reigning power which only exists for this world. And it was this power that Evelyn was trying to use to pressure Sion into not taking the test. Amidst of all the pressure Evelyn was releasing, Sion started to speak. This surprised Evelyn. She couldn't believe that Sion would be able to withstand the pressure from her power. Sion stated in a calm tone that he had a question. He too released his power. A black star appeared above his head, and as his aura overtook Evelyn's, he smiled, and he questioned who told Evelyn that he didn't have the power to take on the test, as well as the Bixyong Palace. Sometime later, Evelyn returned to her palace with the knights she intended to station at Sion's palace. As she entered through the gates with the knights behind, her arrival was announced. A knight approached Evelyn, and he questioned why she was returning with the knights. Evelyn told the knight that they refused to accept her help. This confused the knight, and he inquired if Sion was the one who refused Evelyn's help. And Evelyn replied, with a serious expression on her face, saying the knight is correct. She added that Sion had changed a lot, to the point that she is starting to doubt whether he is still the same person that she knew. Evelyn started to wonder how Sion changed so much in such a short amount of time, or if maybe Sion had been fooling them this entire time by hiding his power. She thought back to the black star that had appeared above Sion's head when they were discussing. Her thought was that the star wasn't something natural. As she became more immersed in her thoughts, she asked the knight to increase the guards that look out for the imperial palace. She asked the knight to do this secretly as to avoid Sion noticing. And she also wanted the guards to keep a close eye on Sion. Back at the Imperial Palace, we see Sion staring down at a tray that was given to him by Evelyn in a daze. Because of the gift, Frito stated that Evelyn must treasure Sion greatly. Sion continued to stare at the tray, which had a heart on it in disbelief. He couldn't believe that Evelyn would give such a precious thing so willingly. This heart can work as an elixir that condenses the power and stamina of an ogre that has lived for 1,000 years. Sion noted that it feels nice to have this level of support, and he thought that this much would be enough to function as a temporary measure. His attention was then drawn to the power Evelyn displayed earlier. Both the nature and method of Evelyn's power is similar to the Black Star River. But Sion believed that he is the only one who can use the Black Star River ability, so this made him question how there was a similar power that feels similar to his own in this novel. He couldn't wrap his mind around this, but then again he thought to himself that he entered a novel, which is also nonsense in the first place. He decided that it would be best if he didn't give this further thought, and he noted that Evelyn's favor might come in handy later. Then there was a knock on his doors, and a night station on the outside expressed that Priscilla was looking for Sion. Sion asked the guard to send her in, and Priscilla entered the room with a skeptical look on her face. She asked Sion why he suddenly called for her, after he had been treating her like she didn't exist. Sion expressed that since it's been a long while since Priscilla started staying in his palace, he felt like she should at least return the favor. Priscilla was confused, and she questioned why Sion was bringing this up all of the sudden. Sion showed Priscilla a piece of paper which had a drawing of a magic circle on it, and he asked her if it would take her a long time to complete it. At first, Priscilla wasn't interested in the paper. She held it in her hands, with a bored expression on her face. But the closer she looked, the more intrigued she became. With her interest piqued, she asked Sion to tell her where he got this paper. Sion told her that he drew it, however she couldn't believe this. She expressed that this form, composition, and even the driving principles are things that she had never seen before. Sion told her that he didn't care about all that. He reminded her that he only asked if it would take her a long time to complete the magic circle. And with a serious expression on her face, Priscilla told Sion that she could have it done by tomorrow. Priscilla couldn't believe that Sion would have mastered magic spells to this extent. This magic that Sion wanted her to complete was a bit similar to a detection magic, except with a slight difference. It's like Sion is trying to force something out of hiding. She became curious, so she asked Sion what he plans on using this for. Sion smiled, and he expressed in a chilling tone that he will use it to prepare a hunt. The next day, Priscilla completed the magic circle. Sion gathered everyone in his palace in the training grounds, and he had the magic circle drawn on the floor. A maid asked a butler, Bush, if he knows why the prince asked them to gather in the training grounds. Bush expressed that he doesn't know. He told the maid that ever since Sion changed, he couldn't find himself to understand what he was thinking anymore. The maid looked towards the sky, and she agreed with Bush. She added that the now changed prince seems a bit scary. After everything was ready, Sion told Priscilla to begin, and Priscilla stepped into the magic circle that was drawn on the floor, and she started chanting a spell. As she went on, the magic circle below her feet started to glow a fiery orange. The maid from earlier asked Bush if he knew what this ominous light was. Bush remained silent. The maid grew concerned, so she asked him if something was wrong. However, Bush continued to ignore her, and he now had a constipated look on his face. Priscilla bit her thumb. This drew blood, and she let the blood drip onto the magic circle. This pushed Bush to the limit. He couldn't hold it back any longer, and he started transforming into a demonic monster. As Bush transformed, Sion looked on with a cold expression on his face. The magic that Priscilla just used was called Pursuer, and it's a type of magic that reveals the true form of enemies within a range. After Bush had finished transforming, Priscilla was left horrified. She questioned what this monster in front of her was, and Sion told her that this is the true enemy. Demons are the true enemies of Chronicle of the Flossomer hero. They serve the Demon King, and they align with his plan of destroying the world. And just as Sion expected, there was one in his palace. The demon rushed at Priscilla. The horrified Priscilla was so terrified that she couldn't move. She stood frozen, questioning why the demon was coming towards her. The knights who were present quickly moved in front of Priscilla, creating a wall to protect her. Seeing this scene unfold in front of his eyes confirmed one of Sion's theories. Priscilla's blood is called the demon's blood. This is because her blood can act as a celestial elixir for the demons. And based on the novel, in 1 year's time, Priscilla will be kidnapped by the demons, who will be seeking her for her demon blood, and they will leave her in a condition where she can become a constant supply of blood, a state in which she is neither alive or dead. This is why she is called the Princess of Misfortune in the novel. Sion knows that even the weakest demon has great power that's incomparable to humans. However, the guards didn't know this. The one who seemed to be the new leader of the knights ordered the others to prepare their swords. Sion quickly moved in front of them, and as he approached the demon, he noted that there must be plenty of these creatures in the demon realm. The demon continued its charge, preparing to charge past Sion. As the monster got closer, Priscilla called out to Sion out of concern. But Sion remained standing in front of the monster. The monster shot its tentacles at Sion, and Sion wrapped the mana of the Black Star River around his hands. And he grabbed the monster by the neck and he started choking it. As he did this, he observed the monster's body, and he found out that they have 2 hearts. Sion found one of the hearts and he destroyed it. The demon realized that Sion had learnt about its 2 hearts, and it felt Sion destroy one of its hearts. It hit Sion away, and as Sion gathered himself, it started questioning what was going on. It turned to the magic circle questioning what it was, then it turned to Sion, who still had the mana of the Black River ability wrapped around his hand, and it questioned what kind of power Sion was using. The demon glared at Sion, questioning who he was. Sion glared at the demon, and with a serious expression on his face, he told it that he was its opponent. The demon became furious. It rushed at Sion, and it attacked with one of its tentacles. Sion calmly lifted his hand, and he used his ability. A black streak of mana flowed from his hand, and it blocked the demon's tentacle. The demon couldn't believe its eyes. It started questioning how Sion is able to block all of its attacks. It then noticed the black streak of mana that had been flowing around its body. Sion motioned his hands forwards, and he started searching the demon's body for its second heart. And after finding the demon's second heart, Sion crushed it. The demon cried out in pain, and as it fell to the ground, Sion coldly glared at it. This incident made him glad he strived to get his Black Star River ability to rank 1, because this battle would have been difficult otherwise. Sion continued to observe the demon's body to make sure it was dead. The demon's corpse suddenly started to disappear. This surprised Sion at first, but he quickly remembered that the book stated that once you destroy the hearts of the demon, they will no longer be able to send information back to the demon territory, and once that connection is destroyed, they will disappear. After the demon's corpse had disappeared, a group of knights suddenly rushed into the training grounds, calling out for Sion. They approached Sion, who was just standing there gathering his thoughts. The head knight bowed his head, and he greeted Sion. He introduced himself as Alex of the White Lion Knights, and he asked Sion if he could tell them what happened here. Sion couldn't recognize these knights, and because of that, he concluded that they must be the knights Evelyn secretly sent. He wiped the demon's blood off his cheeks and he expressed to the knights that nothing happened. This confused Alex and he stared at Sion with a questioning gaze. Sion didn't feel like he should be letting people know about the demons, at least not yet. He doesn't want the demons finding out about the fact that he could draw them out, so before letting the world know about the demons, he wanted to hunt down the ones in the Imperial Palace first. With this in mind, he told Alex that he just eliminated the enemy. The scene then shifts to another palace, and inside one of the rooms in this palace, we see a gray-haired man observing a picture of the Imperial Palace. Then there was a knock at this person's door, and the one doing the knocking referred to this person as Your Grace. The gray-haired man glared at the door, and he told the one who was knocking to enter, and a brown-haired knight entered, and he reported that there had been a disturbance at the Sleeping Star Palace. The gray-haired man was confused, and he questioned if they had figured out he was the one who ordered the raid on Sion. But it didn't make sense that they would be found out this quickly, because as the knight reported earlier the raid failed, and even they didn't know the reason why the raid was a failure. The knight stated that he was here to report about something else. He told the gray-haired man that dark magic was detected at Sion's palace. This confused the gray-haired man, and he asked the knight to elaborate. The knight expressed that this is all the information he has. He explained to the gray-haired man that all of their eyes in the palace have been cut off recently. They even questioned the servants who work there to get more information. But the servants wouldn't talk either. The gray-haired man was bothered about the lack of information on this matter, so he ordered the knight to send more people to gather more information. The knight accepted, and he added to his report that there's a rumor going around saying that the Prince Sion has changed recently. The gray-haired man was intrigued. He asked the knight to tell him about the rumors, and the knight expressed that the rumors say Sion's temper has become very fierce, and he stated that Sion is also rumored to be wielding unknown powers. The gray-haired man questioned if Sion had finally gone mad. But it made sense because Sion's life was in constant peril, so it's no wonder he eventually went mad. With a smile, the gray-haired man called Sion a weak bastard, and he told his knight that he didn't care about the rumors. To him, Sion has been a loser since birth. The only thing Sion has left of Agnes's blood is the color of his hair. So no matter how mad Sion gets, he is nothing more than a worm crawling on the floor to him. A question came to the mind of the gray-haired man, and he asked his knights if Sion still plans on taking the test for the succession ceremony. The knight expressed that Sion hasn't said anything about giving up, so he guessed that that would be the case. The gray-haired man chuckled, and he stated that Sion must have no idea what he is doing. The gray-haired man started tapping the armrest of his chair repeatedly, and spoke out loud saying something about the succession ceremony. The knight heard this and he became confused. The knight started wondering what the gray-haired man plans to do with the succession ceremony. The gray-haired man expressed with an ominous aura that he was thinking that they should make the succession ceremony a little bit more interesting this year. Later that night, Sion left his palace in a cloak to hide his identity. Sion knows that there is 1 week left before the succession ceremony, which is why he was out here. He looked around, and he realized that his destination should be close. It was quite easy for him to get to the outer areas of the palace, which was unexpected. A short while later he arrived at his destination, and he stood at the door. As he stood there, he thought to himself, questioning if this place was the Meal of Moonlight. As he entered the bustling tavern, laughter from friends catching up, and other gossip filled the tavern. Sion observed quietly, and he narrated that this tavern is quite popular in the capital city. Sion shifted his gaze to a servant entering a door that led to the rooms upstairs of the building, and he continued on narrating that this place was so popular that no one can go upstairs, which is where the private rooms are, unless you make an appointment. But Sion knows that the whole restaurant business that is operating in the tavern is used so the owners could hide the true identity of this place. The true identity of this place is the Information Guild, Eye of the Moon. To be more precise, this place is one of the secret branches of the Eye of the Moon Guild. Sion approached one of the tables, and after he took a seat, a male server approached Sion's table carrying refreshments, and he asked Sion if he was ready to order. The waiter started pouring water out for Sion in a cup, and as he poured the water, Sion expressed that he would like to order some sunlight liquor and fired snow flowers for a snack. The waiter's facial expression suddenly changed. With a serious expression on his face, the waiter turned to Sion, and he expressed that he will get on that. The scene then shifts to Sion following the waiter down some stairs. The stairs led them deep underground, and a short while later they arrived at a door leading to a room. The server brought Sion inside the room, and inside this place Sion was faced with a woman sitting at her desk. After seeing Sion, the woman expressed in a skeptical tone that this was the first time she was seeing a guest from this place. Sion asked the woman if she was the branch manager here, and if so, he expressed that he wanted her to do something for him. The woman expressed that she is willing to help, but she asked Sion if he would reveal his identity first. Sion was taken aback. He questioned when the Information Guild started asking for their employers' identities. The woman's gaze was fixated on Sion. She told Sion that they wouldn't usually ask for an identity, however she expressed that this is a special case. She explained to Sion that this place only recently became the branch of the Eye of the Moon. The woman started tapping on her table, and she added that this branch hasn't even officially opened yet, so this place is unknown not only to the outsiders, but to most of the Eye of the Moon's core members. She expressed that she remembers all the faces she meets, but she couldn't remember seeing Sion's face. As soon as she finished her sentence, a group that had been hiding in the shadows appeared, and they quickly surrounded Sion. They prepared to strike him down, however soon after they lifted their blades at Sion, this group lost control of their bodies. Sion calmly turned his attention to the group that had surrounded him, and he questioned if he should have waited a bit more before coming to this place. Sion released a black streak of mana, and as he motioned his hand to the side, the black streak of mana knocked back those who had surrounded him. The bodies of these men flew back into the wall, and they fell to the ground. The woman was left speechless. The guys that Sion just tossed aside are skilled guards assigned to protect her. Some of them were even from the main branch of the Eye of the Moon, yet they were defeated so easily. While the woman was still in a daze, Sion tipped the hood of his cloak downwards, and he expressed that how he found out about this place isn't important. The important thing is that he has a commission for them. He approached the woman's desk, and he asked her if she was going to take on his request. As he said this, the woman's eyes widened, almost like she had recalled something important. Afterwards, she nervously asked Sion to tell her about his request. Some time later, after Sion had made his request and left, the woman repeated Sion's request out loud, which was for the Eye of the Moon to get information about the Black Forest, and to get him a forged ID. As she thought about his request, she tried to figure out why he would request something like this. The server from earlier approached, referring to this woman as Lady Aileen, and he questioned why she accepted Sion's commission. Aileen asked the waiter if he remembered Sion's fight with the guards earlier. The server expressed that he remembered, and he stated that it's something he couldn't forget even if he wanted to. Aileen told the server that during the fight Sion's robe came off slightly, and through the commotion she noticed that he had gray hair. Aileen explained to the waiter that there is only one family in this world that has that kind of hair color, and that family is the royal family, the House of Agnes. As the waiter was about to express what Aileen's speculations could spell, Aileen interjected, and she stated that one of the Agnes lions must be on the move. The server lowered his head, and he expressed that he will assign a top-tier agent to investigate this case. Aileen nodded, and she asked the waiter to look into everything from who Sion could be, to why he left the Imperial Castle, and why he traveled alone. Additionally, she asked the server to have the agents look into the Black Forest as well. The server expressed that he understood his assignment. And as the server walked out of her room, Aileen became immersed in her thoughts. No matter how hard she thought about it, she couldn't figure out Sion's identity. The charisma and the power to take down all those guards at once was surprising. This made her question if Sion could be the person closest to becoming the next emperor. The next day, at Sion's palace, Priscilla could be seen hurrying to Sion's room angrily. She thought about the incident the other day a lot, but it just doesn't make sense to her. That creature that appeared in the training grounds was definitely the deed of a dark magician. And on top of that, after doing some thinking on her own, she realized that that magic circle was for the purpose of tracking down dark magic. Priscilla stopped for a moment, and she noted that she wouldn't be the only one who had doubts about this incident, so she guessed that the royal family was probably thinking the same thing she was. Afterwards, she continued to walk angrily towards Sion's room, and she reassured to herself that even though Sion refused to give the royal family any information, he should at least tell her about it since she was the one who drew the magic circle, and even provided the blood required. As she stomped angrily, she was stopped at the doors to Sion's room by Frito. Confused, Priscilla angrily asked why she was being stopped from entering Sion's room. Frito expressed to Priscilla in a serious tone that Sion doesn't wish to meet anyone at this moment. He explained that Sion is in a lot of shock due to the recent incident. Priscilla thought this was ridiculous. She pointed her finger, and she angrily demanded Frito stop lying to her. She shook her head, stating she wouldn't believe any lies about Sion being in shock, when he was the one who got rid of that thing to begin with. Frito interjected, and he asked her to please refrain from saying those words. He glared down at Priscilla, and he expressed that Sion has decreed silence upon that matter. Priscilla furiously questioned why she had to follow Sion's orders when she wasn't even from the Imperial Palace, nor was she his subordinate. But as she said this, she remembered Sion's recent change in personality. This made her go quiet. Seeing that she had calmed down, Frito informed her that Sion left them a message for her. Curious, Priscilla started questioning what it could be. Frito informed her that Sion wanted her to return home quickly if she had no more business here. This made Priscilla angry again, and she started pouting. The scene then shifts to Sion in a train powered by mana. Sion looked around the train. He was impressed because a train powered by mana didn't exist in his world originally. He concluded that it must exist because the novel is set in a time centuries into the future, and he noted that he will have to apply this when he returns to his original world. Moving on from that, Sion felt like something was off, but it was just as he expected. He noticed a man in a cloak, similar to him, was sitting on the opposite side, 2 seats behind him. However, he wasn't surprised because he predicted that some eyes would be following him because of the commotion he caused in the secret branch of the Eye of the Moon before he left the Imperial Palace. This was what he was aiming for, which is why he showed his hair color during his battle with the guards. And he was allowing them to stay close to him because it would be convenient for him to use them to get information whenever he wants. Plus, the Eye of the Moon is a place that served as the eyes and ears of the hero who would appear in the near future. In the novel, they are a guild that would provide support to the hero purely with the belief of saving the world, and they did this without any gain in mind. So because of this, Sion got curious, and he wanted to see them work with his own eyes. Sion's attention was then drawn to the announcement that the train will soon be arriving at the ruined station, and the conductor asked the passengers who would like to exit to depart from the left door when they arrived. Sion got up from his seat to wait by the left door while still being immersed in his thoughts. Sion thought to himself that he needs people who will act as his hands and legs. After the train stopped and Sion got out, he continued thinking to himself that the knights and servants of the Pointer Star Palace were too lacking in power and skill for the plans he had, and he didn't have the time to train them either. This reinforced his idea of making use of the information from the novel and bringing in new people to his circle. Sion made his way to the outer city of Ruin, since that is the place where he would get his first subordinate. Specifically, an area closer to this city is where he would find his first subordinate. After arriving, Sion stood at the center of town observing the scene. In front of him was a pit emitting fire. Sion observed the fire closely, and he noted that he made it just in the nick of time. The fire represented the Purification Festival, which is held once a month in Ruin. The Purification Festival is an event to purify sins and pray for future well-being, and they do this through beings that protect the city. According to the novel, Ruin would meet its downfall in this Purification Festival, and the Black Forest is the starting point of Ruin's downfall. The Black Forest is a place that's said to be known only to the Lord of Ruin and his family, and the Lord's permission is necessary to enter the Black Forest. Sion started walking away from the fire in the middle of town, and after turning into an alleyway, he spoke, asking the person that was following him to come out. The person didn't respond, so Sion lifted his hand, and as black streak of mana flowed from his hands, he expressed that he doesn't like saying the same thing twice. The black streak of mana flowed to the person who was invincible. After coming in contact with the black streak of mana, this person became visible. He fell to the ground, and after getting his bearing, he stared up at Sion, questioning how he was able to notice him. Sion ignored his question. Instead, he expressed that he will add another commission for the Eye of the Moon. In a confident tone, Sion expressed that he wants information about the ongoing mercenary recruitment at the Lord's Castle, and he wants the location of those bearing a 6-headed beast tattoo in this city. This confused the person that was following him even more. However, instead of elaborating, Sion turned his back towards him, stating that the Eye of the Moon is one of the best intelligence guilds in the Empire, so it's his belief that it won't take them too long to figure out what he means and get him the information. The person was left in a daze. The Eye of the Moon isn't exactly at the top yet, and as Sion walked away, this person looked on, and he wondered how Sion knew so much information about the Eye of the Moon. The scene then shifts to the Palace of Ruin, and the voice of a man could be heard asking someone if they really had to do this. Inside a room, a woman had her head bowed, and she told the one that inquired earlier that this is something she has to do. She expressed with a serious expression on her face that this is an opportunity to eradicate these fucking purifiers. The person she was talking to brought his hands together, and he explained that the only thing their ancestors who controlled the power of dragons could do was seal that creature, so he nervously questioned how she was planning on dealing with it. The woman called out to this person, referring to him as father, and she passionately expressed that she doesn't want to give the people of their land to those bastards anymore, even if they have done something unforgivable. After saying this, she stormed out of the room, leaving her father in a daze. As she walked away from the room, this lady mocked the mantra, family of a great hero who subjugated evil, which was her family's mantra. She gritted her teeth, stating that they are still being controlled by the purifiers. The Lord of Ruin's daughter left the castle, and she headed to the recruitment area. At the arena where the recruitment trial for the mercenaries would be hosted, she was seen angrily approaching by a red-haired man and a blonde-haired man. Seeing the agitated look on this woman, Rain's face, the blonde-haired man asked if everything was okay. The red-haired man chuckled, stating that Rain probably got scolded by that old man again. A man with glasses interjected. He asked the redhead, Rango, to watch his mouth, since the person he was talking about is the lord of this city. Rango turned to the man with glasses, Lion, and he made a sly remark, saying Lion is boring because he always acts serious. This remark irritated Lion. He glared at Rango, expressing in a cold tone that he can't just ignore insults towards the lord of the city. To keep things from escalating, Rain asked the both of them to stop. Afterwards, she inquired about the recruitment, and she questioned if they found anyone useful. Rango turned her attention to the mercenaries who had gathered for recruitment so far, and he expressed that even if they filled their ranks with 10 of these men, they would still be useless in battle. Rango smiled and he told Rain that they should just do the operation themselves. Lion interjected, stating that this is the only time he can agree with Rango. Rain shook her head in disappointment at the sight of the mercenaries. Then she turned to the blonde-haired man, Hart, and she asked him if anyone got his attention. Hart started looking through the mercenaries again as he observed them. He told Rain that he wasn't sure if they would be useful, but he did notice some interesting mercenaries who could prove useful. As he finished saying this, Hart's eyes lit up with excitement, and he pointed out a mercenary at the gate of the recruitment arena. Sion, who had dyed his hair black, walked through the gates confidently, with an ominous aura about him. Some time later, almost all the mercenaries had gathered, so Rain decided that they should get started. As Rain explained what would be happening during the recruitment, the mercenaries stood listening attentively. The mercenaries then started gossiping amongst themselves, as this was their first time seeing most of the 7 elites of the North gathered in one place, and they questioned why the 7 elites suddenly posted a recruitment request. Amidst all the gossip, Sion had his gaze fixated on Rain. This woman in front of him was Rain Dranier, and in the novel she becomes one of the hero's allies in the future. Rain was blessed with talent given by the heavens that only appears once in 1,000 years. Strongest spear user in history, Dragon Slayer, King Godly Spear. These are all the titles she will attain in the future. And in the novel, Rain stands as one of the strongest characters. However, Sion knows that everything he narrated earlier doesn't apply right now. Sion, under the fake name Xian Harns, was called to come to the center of the arena. As he approached the battle arena, the other mercenaries observed Sion closely, and they chuckled amongst themselves at the sight of his weak body. After entering the arena, Sion was met with his opponent. Sion's opponent, Human Slaughter Euro, an obnoxious wanted criminal who walks free because the troops were afraid to arrest him, chuckled after seeing Sion, and he questioned if he would really be his opponent. Sion ignored his opponent. He instead turned his attention to the 7 elites, especially Rain. From what he knows from the novel, what they judge to see if you would be fit for the operation is skill. Euro was slightly annoyed that Sion was ignoring him. He pointed the end of his spear at Sion, and after getting Sion's attention, he expressed with a smile that someone like Sion is going to die today. Sion remained silent. This further agitated Euro, and with an annoyed look on his face, he warned Sion to go down before it was too late. Euro quickly rushed in, and in that moment, he continued on saying that Sion should do this if he doesn't want to lose a limb. Euro pulled back his spear, and he jumped at Sion to strike him down. Sion looked oddly calm. He glared at Euro, and he started searching for the strength points in Euro's attack. Suddenly, Euro's body became translucent, and orange dots appeared throughout his body, indicating to Sion the strong points in Euro's attack. Sion observed the strong points, and he narrated that every movement that exists in this world has a strong point. Sometimes there can be tens of thousands of strong points in a single move, and if even one of those strong points is disturbed, then the whole attack will fall apart. Sion noted that this should be enough, so he decided not to use his Black Star River ability. Sion directed some mana at one of the strong points in Euro's attack, disorienting him. And as Euro stumbled, Sion moved to the side, and he expressed that it's a shame for Euro since his attacks won't work on him. Sion tripped Euro, and as Euro was falling to the ground, Sion pulled back his fists, and he uppercut Euro, sending him flying. With Euro's defeat, the other recruits were left speechless. They couldn't believe their eyes. They questioned how someone with a weak body like Sion's was able to beat the notorious Euro. Sion ignored them. He turned around, and he started walking out of the arena. Hart, who had been closely watching Sion's battle, turned to Rain, and he asked for her opinion about Sion's battle. He expressed that he was further intrigued by Sion because he was able to win the battle with a minimum amount of movement. And usually people only use those kinds of strategies when they face an opponent more powerful than them. However, he thinks Seon was fighting efficiently because of his weak body, and Rain agreed. Rango interrupted Rain's thinking. He couldn't understand why she was so interested in a weak-looking bastard. He agreed that Seon has good skill, but the skill Seon just showed is something any one of them can do. He added that if they recruited Seon, he would die with just a slip during their mission because of his weak body. Lion expressed that he has the same thought as Rango. He explained that during the battle Seon seemed like he was walking on blades. He did notice some trace of training, but because of how Seon fought during the battle, he concluded that Seon was most likely born with a weak body. Lion praised Seon for having a great sense of battle. However, he started wondering why Seon didn't become a wizard instead, since his weak body would hold him back during mercenary work. Rain expressed that maybe Seon couldn't become a wizard because he didn't have the talent for it. Sometime later, the recruitment was drawing to an end, and Rain bowed her head in disappointment because she couldn't find a single person who was promising. However, as disappointed as she was, she quickly resolved herself, and she noted that they can't delay the operation any longer. She looked up, and her attention was drawn to a strange man entering the area walking awkwardly. Rain observed the man closely, and she noticed the tattoo of a six-headed beast on the man's right ankle. This agitated her. She stood up from her chair, and she angrily questioned why a bastard from the Purification Cult was here. The Purification Cult is a minority group that worships the evil sealed in the Black Forest that Rain is trying to subdue. It is a religion that spreads like a disease in the northern part of the empire. This of course includes the city of Ruin. The members of the Purification Cult are all irredeemable trash. Their crimes range from kidnapping to murder and human sacrifice. Rain was confused. She made sure to filter through the mercenaries twice before beginning the recruitment, so she questioned how a Purification Cult member was able to get through. Rain quickly grabbed her spear. This confused Heart, and he called out to her in a questioning tone. The old man suddenly started laughing maniacally. Then he expressed in an ominous tone that the six-headed beast shall arrive. The old man took off his shirt, revealing a heart implant on his chest. The man added to his previous chant, saying it is their duty to make way before she arrives, and they must purge these ignorant non-believers. Hearing this, the remaining participants started to panic. The old man started to transform, and he added that these ignorant fools will realize how foolish they are through death. The old man grinned, and his eyes started glowing red. The old man's body became disfigured, but before he could finish, Rain jumped from where she was, and like a bolt of lightning, she struck down the old man with her spear. The other members of the 7 elite rushed to Rain. Rain turned to face them, and she expressed that they should calm down. She stated that for now she thinks she stopped them. However, her attention was quickly drawn to behind Heart, Rango, and Lion. Behind them she noticed another person entering the area with an ominous aura. Rain quickly realized that she had been duped and that the old man was a distraction. She shouted with a distraught look on her face for someone to stop this person. However, this person's body had already started to become disfigured, and shortly after this person exploded, but suddenly black streak of mana appeared around the explosion. Rain gritted her teeth, and she braced herself, but during the shockwave, her gaze was fixated on the explosion. After the dust settled, it revealed that the explosion was contained somehow, and the black streak of mana that Rain noticed around the explosion quickly started to disappear. The other members of the 7 elites were left speechless. Rango and Lion quickly approached Rain. Rango started laughing. He questioned how Rain was able to do that, and with a smile, he asked when did she secretly learn to do something like this. With a concerned look on his face, Lion asked Rain if she was okay. Heart also approached, and he complimented her, saying that was amazing. Rain still had her gaze fixated forwards. In a serious tone she told the other member of the 7 elite that she wasn't the one who did that. She then asked them if they didn't see what happened. Before the Purification Cult member exploded, Rain saw Seon standing behind the Purification Cult member. And right before the explosion, Seon lifted his hand, and black streaks of mana flowed from his hands. And that streak of mana was the reason why the explosion was contained. Rain was left in a daze, questioning if what she had seen was real. Seon remembered everything in the novel. Because of this, it was easy for him to predict and change the occurring events. That's why he has been handling everything easily. But for the recruitment, he knew based on her character in the novel, that merely outperforming the other mercenaries wouldn't be enough to capture Rain's attention. Fortunately, the Purification Cult member's attack occurred without any errors, and because he took care of it, he was able to get recruited. And the next day he was invited to their strategy meeting. After everyone arrived, Rain struck the table to get their attention, and she expressed that everyone present in this room will be taking part in the subjugation operation. In a demanding tone, she ordered them to get familiar with one another. The 7 elites and the mercenaries from the recruitment looked around the table. Seon looked around and he made note of someone named Kayla, another member of the 7 elites of the north who wasn't present for the recruitment yesterday. Kayla was sitting beside a man Seon had never seen before, so he guessed that that person was a nominee. Then Sion turned his attention to an elf, and he noted that it seems like him and this woman were the only ones selected from the mercenary recruitment. After giving everyone some time to get familiar, Rain spoke, saying from this point on she will begin to summarize the subjugation operation, so they had better listen well. Rain explained to the others that a peculiar forest exists between Ruined City and the Salios Mountains, and in that forest everything including the trees and grass is stained black, which is why they call it the Black Forest. Those who enter the forest never come out, so it is prohibited to enter, and that is why the forest is managed by the city. The elf-ear mercenary interrupted. She expressed that she already knew about the Black Forest, so rather than Rain telling them what they already know, she instead wanted to know about what they will be trying to subjugate in the Black Forest, and why. Rain expressed that they will be subjugating evil. This confused the elf-ear mercenary, and she repeated the word evil in a questioning tone, awaiting an explanation. Rain placed both hands on the table, and she expressed that some of them might have heard about the legends about her family's founder. For those who didn't know, she explained that the legend is about a hero who was covered in the blood of a dragon, and afterwards he gained the power of a dragon. He used this power to destroy the evil covering Ruined City, and that is why he is referred to as the founder. Rain's gaze intensified, and she expressed that even though it is a famous story in the north, the evil wasn't actually destroyed back then. She explained that the evil was too strong for the founder to kill, so he sealed it away instead. As such, Ruin has been paying the price for that with. As she said this, Sion interjected, stating they have been paying the price with the purification cult. After Sion said this, Rain glared at him with a skeptical look. Then she stated in a serious tone that Sion is correct. She expressed that to be exact, the purification ritual that takes place at the end of the purification event is the price. Hart was confused, and he asked if Rain was talking about the ritual where convicts from Ruined City are sent to the Black Forest. Rain sighed, stating that that is the ritual she was talking about. She went on to tell them that those people who are sent to the forest are sacrificed to preserve the seal. Hart struck the table, and he expressed in a disappointed tone that he has been wondering why such a barbaric ritual was allowed to continue until now. Rango chuckled, and he questioned if they really need to subjugate the evil in the forest when the convicts are destined to die anyway. Rain motioned her hand forward, showing them her fingers, and she expressed that 5 people a month are offered to the Black Forest as sacrifices. She asked them what they think will happen if there aren't enough convicts. Before anyone could answer, she explained that those guilty of minor crimes, or even innocent ones, will have to be sacrificed instead, because if the quota isn't met then the evil will be released. And to Rain, that is a shitty situation. She clenched her fists, expressing that having to sacrifice her people's lives to some unknown damned bastard isn't something she is willing to do. Rango started clapping and cheering. He agreed with Rain, saying that is a good enough reason for the subjugation. Rain added in a serious tone that they don't know much about this evil entity, but one sure thing is that its power has significantly diminished due to the long-standing seal. She explained that because of a unique magical barrier, only a handful of people can enter the Black Forest, and the people she had gathered here are the strongest ones she could find. Kayla interjected. She expressed that she understands where Rain is coming from, but she pointed at Sion, stating that she doesn't understand why Rain was including him. Rango agreed with Kayla. He turned to Sion, saying he would like to know the reason as well. The 7 elites of the North, who are called the Skies of the Next Generation. With just their names alone, a huge support force can be formed, and their skills are said to have surpassed the limits of humans. And 5 among those elites have gathered here, so based on all the information about them, Sion expected that they would be skeptical of him because of his weak body. Rain went silent, and Sion observed her closely, waiting to see what she would tell the others. Rain sighed, and she expressed that she just has a feeling about Sion, a feeling that they will need him somehow. Rango was agitated. He questioned if Rain had been drinking for her to say they would need someone with a weak body. Sion let out a sigh of relief. From what Rain said, he concluded that she seemed suspicious of him. He made sure she saw his power when the purification cult members attacked. But since she wasn't telling the others about his power, confirmed another one of Sion's suspicions. It gave him proof that Rain is suspicious about people in this room as well. And it made sense for her to be suspicious, because a man from the purification cult coming inside the palace would be impossible without help from the inside. Sion knows who the betrayer is, but he had no plans of telling Rain who it is right now, because all these are trials for Rain to grow stronger. Moving on from that, Rain told the others that they should discuss Sion's matter another time, and she expressed that she will now explain the route they will be taking. As Rain explained the route she planned on taking and why, Kayla glared at Sion. Later that night, by a water fountain, Sion was in a meditation pose, practicing to control the Black Star River ability. After he was done, he released some mana from his hand, and as he observed he noted that he couldn't control it as freely as he used to. It was better than the first time he woke up inside this body, but as of now, Sion isn't sure if he could beat one of the 7 elite. Sion crushed the mana in his hands. He knows that in the future he will face opponents who are way stronger than the 7 elites, and time won't wait for him to get stronger. So to keep up, he wanted to reach 2 stars as soon as possible. Suddenly he heard a voice that caught his attention. The voice spoke saying Sion is using quite a fascinating ability. Sion turned his head to locate the source of this voice, and he saw a white-haired woman approaching him. The sight of the white-haired woman left Sion speechless. With a smile, the white-haired woman asked Sion to tell her how he is doing that. Sion ignored her question. He instead asked her in a questioning tone if she was already released. The white-haired woman was taken aback that Sion already knew who she was, however she didn't think it would matter. She continued to approach Sion, and as she approached, she disappeared, and appeared in front of Sion in an instant. When she was in front of Sion, she advised him not to come to the forest. Sion looked up at her, and with a menacing smile, the white-haired lady expressed that if Sion comes to the Black Forest then he will die. After saying this, she quickly disappeared. After she was gone, Sion smiled slightly, and with an excited tone he expressed out loud that things just got more interesting. He thought back to the look on the white-haired lady's face, and he questioned if she appeared in front of him because he influenced the story. But after thinking about it some more, Sion concluded that it doesn't matter. He stood up, and he walked away from the water fountain. After walking some distance away, Sion spoke out loud, asking someone to come out. The Eye of the Moon member that was following him in the previous part poked his head out of a tree branch, and with a puzzled look on his face, he questioned how Sion is able to tell that he is being followed. Sion didn't answer him, and after the Eye of the Moon member came down from the tree, he asked him if he had the item he requested. The Eye of the Moon member took out a small pouch, and he reached forth his hand, saying this is the highest class spell storage stone that Sion ordered. As Sion took the pouch, the Eye of the Moon member told Sion that it was hard to get this on short notice, so there would be an additional charge. He also asked what Sion planned on using the spell storage stone for. Sion expressed that he planned on using it for surrender. This confused the Eye of the Moon member, and he looked at Sion with a puzzled expression. Sion didn't give him an answer. He turned his back, and he started walking away. Realizing that he wouldn't get an answer, the Eye of the Moon member started racking his brain, questioning how he should report this. The next day, Rain and the subjugation party left for the Black Forest. As the party got closer to the center of the forest, Sion looked forwards, noticing that the forest ahead was really black. And the closer they got, the darker the dirt on the ground, the trees, the grass, and even the stone got. It seemed like all of the light was being absorbed. The creepy forest made Hart uncomfortable. He questioned how the Draenir family was able to keep this place a secret from the public. He added that something as serious as this should have been raided by the Empire, not a city like Ruin. Rango teased Hart, asking him if he wanted to go back. The others joined in as well, saying if Hart is a coward he should go back alone. Sion observed the party closely without saying a word. He was taken aback because even though Rain didn't give them a proper explanation, no one was truly complaining. And Sion could see that they really believed in Rain. The only problem he is encountering is that Kayla is still skeptical of him, and she has been keeping a close eye on him. Sometime later they arrived at the sealed part of the forest, and Rain announced to the others that they will be heading in right away. However, Rain did not enter yet. She could feel that the evil energy had gotten stronger, and even though she doesn't know what is going on inside the Black Forest for that to happen, she couldn't waste any more time. Lion became concerned. He asked her if they weren't going to go in as planned. This snapped Rain out of it, and with a smile, she stated that they will. But before that, she took out her spear, and as electricity flowed through her, she expressed that they should at least knock before entering. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then hit the like button.